start to pop up. In the meantime, I just wanted to say that this meeting is being recorded and will then be shared and posted on our website. Please update your Zoom name to include your preferred names and your pronouns. Your microphone is on mute to start. You will need to unmute to speak. If you're joining via phone, the way to unmute is by pressing *6. You can also use nonverbal feedback options and raise your hand or leave a message in the chat box if you have a question. If you're calling into this meeting, in order to raise your hand, what you have to press is *9. And then one last, if you're joining us while driving, please don't look at your screen. You can hear us, and always you can watch the content, and we'll share it later on once we have it, once we process it. I would appreciate attention on the road. Okay. Well, thank you again for coming. My name is Daniela Sanchez Zamora, and I work in the active transportation team in the transportation department, along with my colleague Hannah Fong. And usually you've met Jeff Alexis, who joins us in these meetings, but in his place is Zach, who works for Public Works. And today we have with us Mary. Mary, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Bovenzi. I'm with the Boston Public Health Commission, and I'm run our chronic disease prevention and control program.
Thank you, Mary. So because Mary is joining us for this meeting, we'll be talking about public health and what the Public Health Commission does and why their work is important for street design. So we'll be going through the connections between street design, health, and well-being, and then discuss transportation and health equity. And then we'll continue to inform you and update you on the Cummins Highway Reconstruction project, the goals and opportunities, and then your ideas, and look to hear your ideas for healthy streets approach on Cummins. And then, as I said, we'll recap what we've done so far and next steps. And I'll pass it on to Zach to continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Daniela. As Daniela said, Jeff couldn't be here tonight, so my name is Zach Wasmuth. I am a Chief Design Engineer for the Boston Public Works Department, and I will be filling in for Jeff's role tonight. And some of you, if you've attended some of our other meetings recently, you may have seen some of these slides before. But if you haven't, welcome, and I'll just go over some things real quickly about the project. What you see on Cummins Highway right now is a temporary trial. It's not the final design. Since we've implemented the temporary trial on Cummins Highway, we've been collecting data and comments from folks like yourself. And that information can all be found on our website, boston.gov/Cummins-Highway. On the next slide, we'll discuss some of the history of Cummins Highway. So Cummins Highway hasn't been updated really since 1955. At that time, around that time in the 50s, the streetcars were removed to create more space for cars, which really reflected the priorities of the 1950s. And it was really to prioritize non-residents of the area to get through the neighborhood quickly. And on the next slide, we'll talk about what's to come for Cummins right here. So for this project, what we're looking at is to completely reconstruct Cummins Highway. That includes new sidewalks, streetlights, traffic signals, resurfacing the roadway, coordinating with utility companies to update as necessary. I'm sure you've all been familiar with the work that the gas company has been doing out there. That's all in anticipation of the work that we want to do to reconstruct Cummins Highway. Currently, the design for Cummins Highway is budgeted at approximately $12 million. And we'll go to the next slide and we'll show how what we're doing to shape up the design. So we need your input on the design. That's critical. We want to get the input of members of the community because your input will help to shape the design of Cummins Highway for the next 70 years. We're currently still in the community outreach phase, and we have not started the design. So we're still gathering the input from you all at meetings just like this. In the next project, we'll discuss some of our project goals. In the next slide, So one of the things that we're looking at, of course, is our Go Boston 2030 goals. Go Boston 2030 is the master transportation plan for the city of Boston. Cummins Highway is part of this effort, and as part of the Go Boston 2030 effort, and specifically for Cummins Highway, we're looking at improving safety on our streets, reducing emissions, and investing in our communities to achieve equity and access to opportunities. In our next slide, we'll show how we're working towards working with you to achieve these goals. One of the key components is working with our partner city agencies on the collective plan. That includes agencies like tonight you'll hear from the Boston Public Health Commission, the BPDA, Parks Department, Disabilities Commission, Neighborhood Services, etc. And that helps us to inform residents of the work and improve our collaboration across departments throughout the city. And then, of course, we also look for engagement within the community. So collaboration with residents to advance your goals. And we want your participation, and we want to hear about efforts that you care about and confirm our collective vision for the future of our projects. So that's a brief summary of where we are and what we're trying to do with Cummins Highway, and I'll hand it over to Mary to jump into the public health portion.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm happy to be with you all this evening. So I guess we will start here. What is the Boston Public Health Commission for those who haven't heard of us before? So we are the city's local health department, and BPHC uses a health and racial equity approach to lead and partner on public health programming. We provide services to residents, and we support policies that increase health equity within Boston. Next slide. So I guess where we want to start with some general framing is, what is health? So this is a definition from the World Health Organization. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. So as we think about this, we think about what health is in our neighborhoods and health is in our city. Next slide. So our social and physical environments shape our health and well-being, and I think this is something we're all familiar with. The conditions in which people are born, grow, live, and learn they influence our access to resources and our opportunities to promote health. So we call these the social determinants of health. And the social determinants are the root causes of health outcomes across populations. So right now, we're going to focus on the neighborhood and built environment, which is just one of the many social determinants of health. Next slide. So our goal is to create neighborhoods and environments that promote health and safety. So how do we do that? We use a health in all policies approach, and I'm going to get a little public health jargony, so feel free to ask questions. The health in all policies approach integrates health into city policies and practices across sectors, so it's not just traditional public health policy. Using this approach, we identify policies and practices that positively or negatively impact health and identify who benefits at what cost. This is also an opportunity to reverse inequitable policies and practices and those that are rooted in racism. And I'm going to go into this in a little bit more detail. But first, think just to point out the analysis, this kind of analysis is important because sometimes we make a policy thinking it will be good, and then there turns out to be unintended consequences. So I have a couple of examples to share. One example that's one of my favorite public health examples. In 1989, Mexico City started a driving restriction policy to reduce emissions. So they assigned, cars were assigned a particular day that they could drive. So they restricted cars, not people. So what happened? People bought a second car. So 20 years later, researchers determined that the restriction not only didn't improve air quality, it made it worse, and it led to an increased number of vehicles in the city. So this is an example of a policy that has unintended consequence that you would take and look at a public health, a health and all policy approach and amend it. Another is if a policy might be good for like a number of years and then the context changes. So let's say you have a parkway type of road and there's nothing along it, and it's fine to drive through, but then we start developing and now there's houses and schools and development. So we need to build the infrastructure, the sidewalks, the crosswalks, the bike lanes for folks. And in many cases, policy is inequitable and it was done that way on purpose. So this is also using this approach to identify and change. And the common example here is redlining, which is the racist practice of banks restricting where Black families could get a mortgage loan. And it created and reinforced government-sponsored segregation. So we know this practice was banned in 1968 and we're still seeing the consequences of it. So yeah, so those are just a couple of examples of why we want to analyze our policies. All right, next slide. So another way to achieve this goal is by designing physical spaces that make it easier to make healthy choices and create spaces for community. We want to make the healthy choice the easy choice. If transit is easily accessible and reliable, it might be easiest, cheaper or faster if you choose to take transit instead of drive. And if sidewalks are inviting and wide and well lit, you might be more likely to choose to walk or roll for an errand instead of jumping in your car. Next slide. And finally, we want to change the status quo mindset, which I think we're all guilty of in Boston, especially of the we've always done it this way. So we want to ask ourselves, why was it done this way? Who benefited? At what cost? And has the world, the context changed since it was done that way? Should we adjust to the new context? So a few minutes ago, in Zach's opening slides, we gave the example of Cummins Highway hasn't been updated since 1955. And it was designed for the health and safety and priorities of 1955. So we're in a really different space now. Seatbelts didn't become law until 1968. So this is what we're talking about. And to Zach's point, in 1955, car ownership was growing, and especially among kind of wealthier folks who wanted to drive through the city and easily. All right, next slide. So now we'll move into kind of the bigger question, what does all of this have to do with health? So I want to take a pause here, and we have a kind of a question, how does street design impact health and well-being? So I want to take a pause and invite anyone who wants to chime in to take yourself off mute, and in your opinion, your experiences, how do you think your street design impacts your health and well-being?
If you're not able to unmute yourself, just raise the hand and we will make sure to unmute you or request that you unmute.
Hi, this is Gail. This is Gail Henville. I'm a resident of Mattapan. I'm also a marathoner and running coach. 43 years of running, and I've ran through pretty much 22 of our 23 neighborhoods time and time again since 1990. And I do run to and from work. And what I do want to applaud is the recent temporary design on Cummins. Although I do have questions about the future of it, the cost, and based on all of the information that I've read, if there's what the future state may be. But I do want to tell you that for many years, Cummins was not an inviting place to me because of their speed at which some of the vehicles roll down at really narrow space, right? Somebody jump in the curb, or I pretty much since COVID, it has been a freeing space to me where I go out during my lunch hour and I either run or walk on it. And the great part of it is, sad to say, that the bike lanes are not heavily utilized. So I'm able to run an asphalt in a bike lane. So in terms of street design impact and health and well-being, for me, it has just really been a savior during COVID when there's been no race. I've been racing since I was 8 years old. And so to have this space that I've ran in for almost a year, which I find something new every day when I go about and run it, obviously for me has been really beneficial.
Thank you, Gal. Yeah, so that's a great point about the design of our the street space for pedestrians, right? For both for walkers, for runners, for exercise. Thank you. Alan?
Yeah, I'm a bicyclist. I live in Rosendale. I frequently go over to the Neponset River Trail to ride. And I used to very reluctantly ride on Cummins Highway, even though I'm skilled at riding, urban riding. Now it's so much safer, so much so that I've been able to convince people who would never, ever have ventured out over to ride over to Neponset Greenway to come riding with me. So I think we'll see more and more bicycle traffic, especially as the Cummins Highway rebuild is completed. Thank you.
Thank you. And we've got a couple of ideas in the chat as well: walkability, green space, ability for fitness, safety, ability to stay fit. So yeah, all good and similar themes. Brandy, do you want to add something?
Sure. I mean, I guess the thing I'm thinking about is that while I agree with the walkability, the safety aspects of it, I do also see on the negative end of it with respect to health is that when you add the bike lanes, when you update the streets, you do the safety, it also lends itself to gentrification aspects. And so on the other end of it, it is a question of financial safety and financial security of the communities that live in the area when you do these improvements. And so, you know, it's kind of that double-edged sword of you improving the safety, you improving the accessibility, but then you're also getting rid of, you know, parking, that type of thing. And then with the beautification, there is gentrification concerns.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. This is Gail again. Pardon me. So if I heard correctly, what you're saying is that this is my interpretation of it. So I just need clarity. So we're not worthy of beautification because apparently, so back up a little bit. Mattapan has the highest percentage of Blacks in all of our Boston communities, highest percentage of home ownership and single condo home ownerships. A lot of us have been here since Jesus was born. I don't think many of us are going to give up our homes, but what I'm hearing is that we're not worthy of beautification on Cummins Highway or in any of our spaces because it brings in gentrification. We've been pushed out by other races. I personally feel that we are long overdue for beautification and for street designs or anything else that beautifies our neighborhood, because Mayor Menino, that was in his plan before he died. And I did bring it up before City Council at a meeting about 2 months ago. So we're long overdue for this. I don't see it being a threat of gentrification in any way. If anything, our community is the last to get it, and we're extremely deserving of it.
Thank you, Gail. Brandy, do
Yeah,
you want
Gail,
to
I
clarify?
definitely, yeah, no, it's not even a clarification. Gail, I absolutely agree with you. I do not disagree at all. All I'm saying is that there definitely are concerns with respect to how much community input is going into this process. And so some of those concerns does lend itself to certain parts of the neighborhoods being more renter based. So yes, you mentioned, areas of Mattapan being home ownership, but other areas of District 4, District 7 are more renter based. And so where's their input, and, will they be priced out of certain communities? So that is all I'm saying. But I absolutely agree that there should be improvement, and it's long overdue. I just want to make sure it's done with all of the community's input.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so I agree.
And
So then it's incumbent upon this particular project managers that's leading this project is to ensure that everybody has been touched, because what you should have done is done a walkthrough and put flyers up for everybody who doesn't have a computer, because we have a very aged community here in Mattapan. And so you should have done that, and you should have engaged other voices and really hear us before you go ahead and, finalize any designs that you have. This is temporary, so hopefully you're going to do that.
Danielle.
Yeah, thank you, Gail, and thank you, everyone. I just want to say that this isn't the only way that people are engaging with us. We also have other events, and we walk the street and meet with people, and we've been doing pop-ups. So we're doing a multi-pronged approach in which we have different, we're walking the corridor and talking to people that are on the street. We're flyering, we're sending mailers, we are hosting virtual meetings. We also have written material. So, I think part of this crucial point that we've been talking about is that all neighborhoods are deserving of improvements, and this is a crucial part and part of the history of Boston, that we want to make sure that we are providing all of these services and all these improvements to everyone. That maybe that wasn't the case before, and part of the reason why we're also coordinating with all of the other departments is because this isn't like, we understand that things have repercussions. And so we're working together to make sure we're addressing everyone's needs, and that we're communicating these concerns to also other departments so that we can work together to sort of find solutions. Another one. Yes, so let me know if anybody wants to add anything else before we continue, because I want to make sure Mary continues to present.
I was just going to say, I appreciate this discussion, and maybe I could get through some more of the slides, and then we have some more space for discussion at the end. Erica, do you want an AM? Do you want to chime in real quick before we keep moving?
Well, I mean, I hope I can get everything out that I need to, but I would like to just comment, because go back to where we're talking about safety and health and what have you. My grandparents and my parents have owned the home for over 42 years in Mattapan. So we've been here for years. And my concern is, although the bike lanes are great for people that ride bikes, but now you have them big enough where cars are actually going down the bike lane because they don't want to wait in the main traffic, which is causing huge concern. My brother actually resides on Cummins Highway, and they have had 3 cars totaled, lost, because people aren't paying attention or either not from the neighborhood driving in this area, and those accidents have occurred. And then you also have me, who I stroll the baby. I'm concerned if a car is in the bike lane and how close they are to the sidewalk. If they get in an accident, I'm going to get hurt, even killed. And I know there's been 2 people already killed on Cummins Highway. The traffic is horrendous. It doesn't look appealing. You have poles that are up, and I know this is temporary. I understand that, but the way that the streets look and the condition, and these poles are just tossed away, the bike lane is extremely too wide for a car to actually fit down in. And then, health-wise, so when there is days that the garbage trucks, they put the trash out on the street, now you have all these rodents and things like that. This is unsanitary. And then The garbage trucks can't go where they need to go, so now they're in the street. It's just a mess. It is a mess, and I wish I could be a part of more meetings. Unfortunately, the times that they have it is when I work. So today I made it a priority, but I wish that people would actually get around to other, because I have neighbors that are elderly that don't have computers, and I heard another person that it's just not getting like you think it is for the people that actually live here and reside here. The people that own business are not affected by that because they run their business and they go home. But the people that have lived here for years should have some input. And those are the people that should be a part of these meetings. And having Zoom and things like that, the technology, yes, has changed, but the people are still alive and they shouldn't be ignored. They own property. We own property. I love where I live. That's why I'm still here. But again, I'm concerned about the health, the safety. I'm a social worker. I've been a social worker for over 20 years, and it is very concerning to see kids not know how to cross in the crosswalk when they have to get on buses. So that's a concern. And
Okay.
I'm done. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So I know there's a couple more folks with questions. I do want to keep moving on the slides. I'm sorry, just so we can, I think it'll be important to kind of set this context for the rest of the discussion, if that's okay. Daniela, is that okay with you? Okay, so if you could just hold the thoughts and then we'll get to them towards the end. And if Daniela, if you could keep track of who's got questions. Thank you. All right, we can go to the next one. Okay, so I think, what some of the things that came up right there in the discussion are the pieces that design elements of a street, right? That can help with traffic, it can hurt traffic, it can help with walking, make it easier, make it harder. So what we want is a complete streets design. And complete streets make it easier and safer for residents to move and to breathe. So we encourage walking, bicycling, and using public transit. They can support us to be more physically active, prevent injuries and deaths, and prevent crashes. They can help keep people better connected to the neighborhood, which supports lower stress levels and better mental health. It can make public transit more reliable. Fewer cars and less idling and better traffic flow leads to fewer emissions and better air quality. And more green space and trees lead to better air quality, lower temperatures, and it's just nice to be outside when your neighborhood is beautiful. Next slide. So this is an example of what we mean when we say complete streets. So complete streets it's a transportation or public health policy that requires streets to be designed to be safe and accessible for users of all ages and ability, regardless of their mode of transportation. So if it's safe for an 8-year-old and it's safe for an 80-year-old, it's safe for everyone. And here's, I think this graphic shows 8 different ways people are using the street. People are walking, people waiting for the bus, people on bikes, people in cars, people, meeting at a business outside a cafe, people living here, the houses, and there's some workers in the back, I think, working on the road. So this is kind of thinking about all of these users in mind. Next one. So this is a similar graphic from the California Bicycle Coalition, and just cities all over the country and different states have adopted complete streets policies and guidelines for all different types of modes. So this is not new, it's not unique to Boston. It's a kind of a best practice across the world. So we have a complete streets policy that I'm sure some of you hopefully know about. In 2013, the city adopted Boston Complete Streets, and these guidelines direct us to consider all types of people and their needs when designing a street. It leads to us doing these community engagement processes and making sure we are getting in all the input. All right. So how does street design impact our health? And so there are many chronic conditions and health behaviors related to our street design. And I'll say, it's really important to note that street design is not the only impact on one's health, and it does not cause these conditions directly. Rather, one's experience with the built environment as a whole and experience with the other social determinants of health impact whether someone develops these types of diseases. So when we're talking about social determinants of health, we're also focusing on a defined community, like how a neighborhood or a racial group experience the social determinants of health. It's never about an individual. So next slide. So these are two examples of health outcome trends that we see in Boston. The map on the left is the percentage of adults in the city who report having hypertension, which is also known as high blood pressure. And the map on the right is the percentage of adults who have had diabetes. The orange color denotes kind of its rates similar to Boston overall. And the red color are the areas where Boston is higher in the cities, where the rates are higher than the rest of Boston, the red color. So what are these maps telling us? These maps are illustrating health inequities. And health inequities are when we see differences in health outcomes that are not naturally occurring, but are rooted in social and economic injustices. So I'm going to go into this in more detail in the next couple of slides. But we know the legacy. I think it's important to mention this as we look at this data. We know the legacy, past and present, of racism in our country impacts health inequities that we see by race. And racism impacts the social determinants of health, which impact health outcomes. So it's just kind of important to keep that focus as we're looking at this. So our goal here is to achieve health equity, which is the BPHC defines it as the opportunity for everyone to attain their full health potential, no matter, and have no one disadvantaged from achieving this potential because of their social position or socially assigned circumstance. So the graphic on the slide here is BPHC's health equity framework. And these isms impact how folks experience the social determinants of health and thus directly or indirectly impact health outcomes. All right, next slide. So what we really want to do is address root causes of health inequities. And I, will kind of reiterate that these health inequities are not caused by personal choices, behaviors, or by one person or problematic policy or practice. They are caused by a system of inequitable policies and practices and how that system impacts the community over time. We know that racism impacts health outcomes and causes health inequities directly. So the differences in health outcomes that we see by race are due to racism, not race. And when we're talking about experiencing the built environment, I think experiencing racism is a factor, not like someone's race is not. So there's nothing inherent about people of color that make them more susceptible to having higher rates of diabetes, hypertension, asthma, or any chronic disease. And I think it's important to state that because I think that is often a myth that we see show up in public health data. So we're focusing on the structural system piece here. Next slide. All right, so dialing in a little bit, because you're probably like, where is she going with this? How does racism impact our street design? So our policies and systems rooted in racism were created inequities many years ago. Remember what we talked about in the health and all policies stuff earlier. It's up to us to identify and change our policies and practices. So people-oriented design. This is what we want in street design. These are streets that are designed to be walkable, easily accessible to commercial areas and to downtown by public transit. In Boston, historically, many of our predominantly white and wealthier neighborhoods like Beacon Hill and Back Bay are people-oriented designed. And on the flip side of that, we have auto-oriented design. So these are streets that are designed to create cut-through neighborhoods. They're designed to drive through, and they physically divide neighborhoods. And historically, we all know this, many of our predominantly Black neighborhoods are auto-oriented, creating cut-throughs between other neighborhoods. So, you know, we have to think about this. Who was this street designed for? And I'll bring up the name, you know, what is the word? Cummins Highway. It's one of the few highways that we have by name in the city. And what does it imply? It implies that the cars, that a street, you know, was designed for cars that drive fast to get where they're going. So these are all just examples of systemic issues that need systemic responses. So where do we want to end up? We have to intentionally and purposefully change policy and practice in street design. Want to focus on people-oriented, environmental friendly design, and recognize that our streets are a building block for a healthier community. So they improve the environment, traffic, and safety in the neighborhood. Street design improves transit access to jobs, education opportunities, food, and other necessities, and supports our physical activity and mental health, keeping us all connected to the neighborhood. All right, next slide. So how is BPHC supporting transportation equity? In 2020, the mayor declared racism as a public health crisis. And in 2021, BPHC developed an anti-racism policy and action plan. We work closely with the city's equity department on particular parts of the plan, and we're working with other departments as well on policies and practices. Next slide, and I'll talk a little bit about the Active and Living and Wellness program, which sits in my office at the commission. So we work with Boston Parks on the Boston Parks Summer Fitness Series that hopefully everyone on this call knows about. We actually just finished for the year, but it's free physical activity classes for residents. We support community-based organizations doing physical activity work in our neighborhoods. We chair the Boston Safe Routes to School Task Force, which is focused on creating safer opportunities to walk and bike to school. We promote active transportation throughout the cities, and we partner with community-based organizations leading community engagement processes on Boston's complete streets. All right, and next one. So that's it for me. I know we got a lot going on in the chat as well. So I wanted to open it up to discussion, and I'm not sure how exactly we want to do this. I think we can start with the folks who didn't get to talk earlier. Thanks for letting me finish the slides. I think it's important to kind of set that context as we get into the discussion. And I'm also not quite sure how much time we have for this part, if any, or if we just want to go and see where we end up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll say let's give it 10, and then if we continue, we can continue talking after we go through the rest
Sounds
of the slides.
good. All right.
So Alenza had her hand raised, but I just saw in the chat that she had to leave. Unless Alenza, if you're still with us, to raise your hand so I can locate you again. If not, we can. Sheila also had her hand raised. Sheila, are you still with us?
I'm sorry, that always happens.
My question was, what is going to happen when it snows? How are the snow plows going to handle the bike lane?
I think from a from a technical perspective, we have the resources to clear the facilities, and then longer term, where the design this is not the final design. So what we're looking at in the future addresses, I know there are a lot of specific concerns in the chat talking about the design and everything. And what we're looking at for the future is continuing to work with the community to understand those concerns and to adapt them and bring them into the final design. So regardless, whatever we build, we want to have something that can be maintained. So plowing and everything is definitely something that we want to take into consideration and do take into consideration. I think, you know, specifically to jump to this topic, you know, what aspects, you know, some of the stuff that Mary was just talking about in those healthy street slides and the stuff that she showed from Complete Streets as we kind of take on, as we take a look at this trial, what worked, what didn't and everything, but what we want to look at for the final design is really what we're interested in gathering from you folks. We certainly heard a bunch of concerns about this, but were there anything in the Complete Street stuff and everything that that Mary was just going over that that interested you, that you'd like to see us consider as we continue these conversations?
So if you could just raise your hand and then I will unmute you and we can just chat through. I see Jasmine has raised her hand, so you can ask her.
I guess my question first is, how do we find out about these meetings? I see a lot of comments that say, we've been having meetings about this since like 2018, 2019, or whatever. This is the second time, excuse me, that I've even heard about a meeting for reconstruction plans and I understand that, yes, we can look, but older people may not get on the internet and things like that. So how are you engaging the community to make sure that they know about these meetings and really actively have people from the community joining in and having these conversations? I just happened to find out about this.
Very good question. So we send out a mailer to about 4,000 addresses around Cummins Highway to let them know that these meetings are coming. We send those about every 2 months or so that we can provide like a long-term like sort of schedule. So these meetings tend to be scheduled well in advance to make sure we have enough notice. We flyer the corridor. That usually happens about a month in advance. And then I walk the corridor almost every week or every other week. And I give out flyers like this one, where you can see sort of like well, you can't see it now, but it has the information, a sort of brief on what is coming. And then I talk about like what the meetings that are happening. And I also talk to people in that moment and gather their feedback and write it down. We've also been going to the Mattapan farmers market, and there we've talked to people. We bring along, I speak Spanish, so I do interpretation if anybody's in Spanish. And we have Esther, who's our interpreter tonight, who also comes to speak to anyone that speaks Haitian Creole to make sure they can talk to us. I also communicate with other departments to make sure that they get the word out on their channels. And we have a pretty big email list at the moment, which we also send out notice well in advance, as well as like a week before, to sort of let people know that this meeting is happening, so that they can sign up and attend. And I'm sure there might be other methods that I've forgotten.
Neighborhood association meetings, we attend a ton of those as well, and work through our neighborhood services folks as well to make sure it gets in neighborhood newsletters and things like that. Yeah, I see that Matthew has his hand raised, so I will unmute him now.
Hello, thank you, Daniela. And I raised my hand so I could piggyback on to that answer that you guys just gave about ways to find out about this. I'm here representing the Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council, and we have a bunch of different mailing lists that send out notifications about not just for this project, but for everything going on in Mattapan. And I'm very happy to get you added to that if you want to put an email in the chat, and I'll add my email in the chat too. I hear what you're saying about people not necessarily being online, which makes it tough. especially during COVID. I can say for the neighborhood council, we've basically gone to everything being online, but we do contact people with phone calls and text messages. So, you know, if there's somebody who it's better to reach out to that way, we're happy to try to, you know, connect people to things that the neighborhood council itself is doing, but also definitely to what's going on with the city. You know, all the various departments, all the different things that they have going on, which is a lot, especially in Mattapan. I want to also though ask a question. I just want to throw this out there since we have the, you know, our public health experts here. One of the things that we've heard in the Public Services Committee of the Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council meetings when we've been discussing this project over the last couple of years is basically, I don't know, I'm summarizing a bunch of different comments that a lot of people have made, so it's not verbatim, but to kind of summarize it, I would say that people are worried that, you know, emergency vehicles aren't going to get through, that it's just going to take a much longer time, like it's going to take longer to get from one end of the corridor to the other. Like how does that balance in with on the public health spectrum? Is that something that's being considered here, or is it just that, you know, clean air is just much more important than, you know, travel times?
Thank you. It is considered, and I think, Zach, do you want to say a little bit about, or Danielle, about the process? I know you guys do like some type of audit, right, to make sure that emergency vehicles that there isn't a problem with emergency vehicles when you're in the design process.
Absolutely. What we have out here, and I just want to reiterate, is not the final design. The final design absolutely needs to accommodate emergency vehicle access so that emergency vehicles can get through. One of the major things that we've always talked about when we talked about the final design is the median. Right now, with the one lane concept and the way that the bicycle lane is configured, the median is there. If you're stuck behind a garbage truck or if you're stuck in traffic or whatever, that inhibits that. So one of the things that we've always been looking for in the final design is the removal of the median so that vehicles are allowed to pass and have that safe access. So we've definitely heard about the congestion, the backups, the getting behind the trash truck, the emergency vehicles to get through. That's a concern to us as it is a concern to you. And it's actually absolutely paramount to any design that we want to look at. So we absolutely hear that loud and clear, and that absolutely will be part of the final design, is to make sure that comment is addressed.
Thank you. And I will say, you know, that is part of the kind of complete streets public health guidelines, is to make sure that that their space is always that it's easily accessible to emergency vehicles. What else we got?
Give me a sec. I need to. Okay. Thank you, Matt, for lowering your hand. This helps. Jasmine, you're up next.
I think my hand was just up from before, but
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I think just to piggyback off, my first thing is you guys said that you talk to people in Hyde Park and Mattapan and you engage them, but the Cummins Highway doesn't just affect people who live in Hyde Park and Mattapan. There are people who live in Dorchester and other parts, and we need to get through, and having one lane is just not enough for us or whatever. But you need to engage all of the city of Boston when making these decisions, not just the 4,000 people that you reached out to. And if you're reaching out to 4,000 people and you see that only 50 people are joining these community meetings, maybe you guys need to try some other ways to get your communities engaged, because maybe what you're doing isn't working.
Thank you, Jasmine. So this isn't, as I mentioned before, this isn't the only way in which you can provide input. Actually, in everything that we print and in everything that we share, we also have a phone number where people can call us, and people certainly call us. People send us emails. I talk to people on the street all the time. So what I'm saying essentially is that this space is a space for you to provide your feedback and for you to provide ideas and inputs for us to work through to the final design. But this isn't the only space where these conversations are happening. And it's also the reason why this isn't just one meeting and done. Like, we are having continuous meetings, we're having focus meetings on different topics that people find that people have raised that they wanted us to address. Like, a lot of people wanted us to talk about public health, and a lot of people were concerned about heat island effects or air quality, which is why we've been having all these meetings to sort of get down into the nitty-gritty and learn more together, and also sort of have input together on how to move forward with the final design. I understand that, yes, there's only 50 people that come to this meeting, but this isn't like a one and done. Like, you can always provide your feedback later on. We've created like a feedback for the last meeting, which I will share later on, so that, you know, if you missed the last meeting, you can see the recording and you can send us feedback on a form, or you can talk to me when you see me on the street. This is a process, but your feedback is sort of like necessary for us in order to move forward, because we've been hearing about the current design that is happening there as a trial, but if we are not focusing on sort of like the feedback that we need to get into the final design, then we can't sort of move forward with that. So it's really crucial. This is a crucial moment for us to really be able to hear what you have to say about what you would like to see in the next 70 years of Cummins. I will unmute Gail unless Zach, you want to say something else.
No, yeah, we can keep the comments going. Yep.
Or Mary. Gail, yeah.
Yes, thank you. So a couple of things that were said that, so as a project manager myself, as a certified project manager, I'm just wondering, so I saw that the cost of this project is $17 million. And I hear that you guys are being a little defensive about the input from the stakeholders. We, the community, are the stakeholders, right? This is our tax dollars that are actually funding this, and maybe some federal dollars thrown in. So we are the stakeholders. At the end of the day, you guys walk away from this project, you deliver it, and we have to live with it. Now, here's a few things for you to consider. So the issue with traffic, way before you design your temporary design in Cummins Highway, grew exponentially in the last 5 years that I've been living here, where traffic is backed up on Harvard trying to get down onto Cummins Highway. So what they would do is circumvent it and come down my street, which is the next through street onto my street is Itasca, onto Cummins Highway. So it is nonstop traffic. It's literally Blue Hill Avenue, Indy 500, 24 hours a day. People speed down our street, right? And so they're trying to circumvent the traffic backup previously before you design, and now they're really trying to circumvent it now with this temporary design, right? There's always traffic. Where I live less than the 800 meters, if I run down to the West Indian Market, it takes me 15 minutes to get there off of Itasca, if you can envision that, literally, because of all the traffic that's there with this new temporary design. And so I'm just trying to figure out, from a project perspective, why even implement a temporary design before you had full mock-up of what the true or the future state or semblance of a future state would look like? Because honestly, the issues haven't been resolved. You're still having accidents. I don't see how our emergency vehicle, there's no outlet for an emergency vehicle unless it's crossing one of the intersection of the side streets coming off of Cummings. And I've witnessed all of your plastic dividers being plowed over from time to time, or somebody's car being hit on Cummins Highway. So it hasn't in any way mitigated the speeding issues, all the traffic violation issues that you are attempting to remedy with this temporary design. So I'd like to know if you guys have schematics of what the future state may look like, because we are the stakeholders. We have to live with it.
Short answer to all of that is yes, we have been looking at that. At our third actual public meeting pre-COVID, that was back in February, we had gone over what was the initial preferred concept, which was the 2-lane, and we had done an extensive traffic modeling analysis at that point in time to take a look at what that would actually look like and what the impacts would be. And at the time, with the numbers and everything that that was working with the volumes to process the traffic through. And what we were always looking at is to have slower speeds. We understand that there's obviously, you know, issues when you implement something like this, that, you know, now that, you know, if people get hung up in traffic or something, that they may try and take another way and everything. We've definitely heard that loud and clear through through many of our engagements with folks about Itasca and other side streets and everything. And I see stuff coming in the chat. So yeah, we're also taking a look at those. So we've studied this as it's been implemented. We've studied the traffic volumes because we've obviously been interested, you know, globally, but also in the city, about how COVID has affected traffic patterns and everything, to see how they were from our baseline numbers that we took back in 2018, 2019 to how they are now. And, you know, we've noticed, you know, a little bit of a drop, but the traffic volumes has remained fairly consistent, actually, surprisingly, well, maybe not surprisingly, but on Cummins Highway. So there's definitely volume out there. And we've also noticed that since we've implemented this, that there have been slower speeds. So we're constantly looking at this to measure the data, but we're also taking those counts and taking all those things into consideration. Again, we've heard it loud and clear about the emergency vehicles, the ugly plastic posts, the clearing of the snow and all of that and everything. And that's absolutely stuff that we're taking back and that we want to incorporate into the final design to make sure that the street, you know, works for the residents and the people who live here and the people who pass through here. And that's why, you know, we're talking here tonight about the elements of complete street design and how it relates back to public health, to try and show you, you know, some of the things that we're trying to accomplish and the tools that we can use as part of this project, to get your feedback on the types of things that that you feel will work for this project. So again, a lot of the things that Mary mentioned about the complete streets and everything, that's what we want to, you know, be able to incorporate, so that we can balance that with the traffic, with all the other needs in the community, so that we can have a healthy street here in the community.
I will ask Rachel to unmute. Rachel, do you have something to say? You should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay. I've heard everything tonight. And there are a couple of comments that I have. You talk about slowing traffic down on Cummins Highway, but what you've actually done is you've stopped traffic on Cummins Highway. And if there is a concern about the cars idling, well, you've caused more cars to idle because of the way the design is now. It has taken me on many occasions to get from Harvard Street down to River Street almost 40 minutes, almost 45 one day. And it was because between the traffic design and the construction and all the other things going on Cummins Highway, it became a parking lot. Cars are idling, which now brings the whole issue of clean air up in smoke, if you will. The other thing is that I don't think, you know, the idea of being people friendly and all of that is a wonderful pipe dream. But we live in a city, especially in our neighborhoods, where people may not always have the choice of taking public transportation if where they need to go is further than a bike ride or a bus ride, and driving is necessary. You've got all of these new developments coming up, which means more people, which means more cars, which means less parking. So how are you really taking the community as it is growing into consideration in these particular designs? I'm just concerned that you're throwing these designs at the community. And even though you're saying you want our participation, knowing the city as I do, because I've worked for the city, you want our input, but in the end, you're going to do what you want to do, or the city's going to do what they want to do. And as it was stated before, the city will walk away and tell the community, here it is, live with it, too bad, so sad.
Again, I mean, we're trying, as part of this process is taking all of these concerns in. I understand the concerns about traffic congestion and everything. And again, the design that's out there now is a temporary design. It is not perfect. There's been utility work. There's been utility work that cut loop detectors for traffic signals that made them perform in a non-optimal way. Those are things that we've worked to address. However, it hasn't been perfect. So there certainly has been traffic delays. There's been people caught behind a garbage truck. We've been monitoring the traffic situation. We've been monitoring travel times. We've been gathering actual data on that, as well as hearing from you all. Again, our goal is, to create a transportation system, not just on Cummins Highway, but citywide, that works for people. We want to provide safe and equitable opportunities for people to take alternative modes of transportation, because supporting an infinite demand for vehicles is not a direction that's sustainable, that's going to work. So like, we want to make sure that we're constantly providing the opportunity for safer travel, for walking and biking, as well as transit, and being able to make those connections. So all of that is certainly not lost on us. That's why we're trying to get these, trying to show you, what we're thinking of, or our ideas, where the complete streets mentality is coming from in meetings like this, and hearing from you all. So yeah, we certainly understand the concerns with the temporary design, but we also want to, share with you our thoughts, and also get feedback on some of the stuff that we've shown tonight. So like the types of things that we can include with this project that you all feel would hopefully make it a success.
I also sort of want to acknowledge for a moment here that we've been talking a lot about traffic and cars and vehicles, and we haven't been talking a lot about sort of the other portion of people as well that use this road. The people walking, the people who need to cross the street to get to wherever they're going, the people who are biking, the people who are just wanting to hang out outside their doors just for a bit in the summer or in the winter, or the need to get to places in other ways or to catch the train at the Blue Hill Ave Cummins train station, or who are just waiting for the bus. And in my experience, walking the corridor, I was crossing the street with a woman, and one car stopped, and then the other car didn't stop. And, I saw that car like this close to me, next to a woman and a child that was like 4 years old. Or the man who died while cycling last year on Cummins before the temporary design was implemented. I just want to acknowledge that we are sort of taking all of these people into account. We understand that traffic is an issue, and that we are trying to balance sort of the needs of traffic and the speeds of the volume that we need in order to also create safer streets for everyone who has been on the road and has sort of been for so long not accounted for. And I just want to make sure that we are sort of thinking of them as well when we are having these conversations. Before we have like 20 minutes, I'm happy to come back to this question, and I'll write down that Gail, Barbara, and Jasmine have their hands up. But I just want to sort of go over, people have asked for visuals of what the future of Cummins could look like. People sort of want to know what's happening and what we've been at. So I just want to move that a step forward, and then we can come back to questions and then share resources, if that's okay with everyone. Okay. So what's next for Cummins Highway? The goal for Cummins Highway is a street that is safer and more accessible for everyone. We want to transform Cummins Highway into a tree-lined neighborhood street that is safer for families to walk, for people to wait for the bus, for riding bikes, and for traveling by vehicle. We want to connect neighbors to the city's network of open spaces, to resources, and make it easier for elders and young people to cross the street. Sorry, and before I move on to our timeline, what you see here are some of the proposed elements of the design that we last month we had a conversation on lighting. we'll be having a conversation on green infrastructure and sort of some of those elements that we could see in the design moving forward. So what does the timeline for this reconstruction look like? The first public meeting that we had was in 2019 in April at the Marathon in person. Then we had a second meeting. So the project was sort of presented in that session. Then we came back with some feedback that people had received and refined some of those project goals and talked a little bit about designs and the goals of the project. And then in the third meeting, the concept designs were presented and sort of elements were weighted. In that meeting, where the design concepts were presented, there was a lot of questions about sort of what would a layout of one lane in each direction look like. So a design trial was sort of created in order to address that and see what that concern would be like. So we had done studies, we had measured traffic in our studies, but we also wanted to do it in person because people had asked us as well in order to see that. So the first phase of the trial started in July of 2020 and went through October. Many of you probably remember that, which are the barrels with water. And we received a lot of feedback on that, it was difficult to see when turning. It was difficult to sort of come into Cummins. The visibility for pedestrians was really difficult. And so we sort of upgraded the trial with the flex post and the changes of the street layout, which is what you see now. And then we began sort of a more consistent engagement of the final design in June 2021, which was, and then we sort of been working on starting the design back in July of 2021. And as I said, this is an ongoing process. So we are right now talking about public health. We'll be talking about green infrastructure in 2 weeks. Then we're hoping to schedule some meetings around trees and pedestrians improvements and roundabouts and other design elements. So I just sort of wanted to give a brief wrap of what these focused conversations have been and sort of what your input has been and what we've been working on. So your input during these conversations is used to inform design and will be shared with other departments to inform their work as well. So in June, we hosted with Marathon Food and Fitness a special edition of Tea Talk with Charles T. Brown to discuss Black mobility and how it's been limited in the US through police, the policies that have been enacted and continue to be enacted, and the public at large, and sort of what can be done to fix that. And then in July, we hosted 2 public meetings with the help of the Environment Department. We talked about heat resilience studies that has been going on and their focus in Mattapan. And then we sort of talked about how to incorporate heat resilient design elements into the Cummins redesign. You asked us to look at how to add more shade, and we've been looking into trees, expanding the tree canopy that we can add, and bus shelters where possible. And also, if you have any more feedback on that, we're happy to hear. We're also, the project of heat resilience is moving ahead, so they would like your input at certain points, and we'll hear what people have said and how we can incorporate it. And in that conversation, we also talked about a lot about your concerns of the temporary design and its impact on emergency vehicles and traffic. We talked also about air quality in July and how transportation policies and design influence air quality. You were interested in us monitoring air quality on the corridor. So we've been looking at locations and sort of how to incorporate and share that information and sort of bring you forward into installing these air quality monitors to process, to monitor air quality, as I said, before, during, and after the project. And then we continue to have discussions on the temporary redesign and how it's affecting air quality. Then in August, we talked with Plan Mattapan Kenya is here with us, and how their work relates to transportation and how our departments collaborate together. In that conversation, we heard a lot about Cummins being part of a larger network, which is another discussion that's come up today, and that we need to sort of take a look at the side streets as well. And we've conducted some traffic counts on those. And you also wanted us to be more proactive and make sure that we're working with the MBTA, trash truck removals, the school buses, on traffic management before the new design is implemented, and also make sure that we're keeping all of these different elements in mind as we move forward with the design process. So we've been coordinating meetings to try to work with them, and then soon we'll probably bring a conversation forward on sort of buses and the shelters and sort of these conversations that we've been hearing. And then in September, which is last month, we talked with the city's street lighting division. We talked about the goals of the city for street lighting in general, and then the opportunities that on Cummins Highway specifically. You were in that conversation, we sort of talked about the preferred alternatives of like what the city's lighting should look like. You expressed some concerns on brightness and the color of the light. So we will be continuing to work with you on the appropriate brightness and color so that it can help visibility and safety while also still being an attractive feature for the street. And you also wanted to know where these lighting elements or similarly have been installed already that have been proposed. So currently you can see them on River Street from Cummins Highway to Hyde Park Way Street is called. And then they've been installed on Union Square, and these include dependent the hits on the street and also the pedestrian. And then Stephanie will drop the link, thank you. So if you just wanna go in there, you'll be able to see a picture of this proposed light and share your feedback with us. Okay, next steps. As I mentioned, we have a meeting on green infrastructure and the Cummins Highway redesign on October 20th at 6:30. Make sure if you can to sign up for that, but if you can't make it, we'll always have these recorded and available on our website. And then, as I said, we've been going to the Mattapan Farmers Market. We'll be there every Saturday in October from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. So that you can come and talk to us, tell your neighbors, your friends, anybody. We're happy to be there and sort of walk through and meet with everyone who passes by. And then you can always set an appointment to have one-on-one discussions with us. We've been having this for almost a year now, I feel, and it's a great opportunity to sort of just drop in, ask a question, get a one-on-one time with us to sort of walk through any concerns or and get your feedback in, and we always keep track and look through those comments. So those happen every other week on Wednesday from 3 to 7, I believe. We can, let me check what time it is. We have just 9 minutes. Do people want me for us to go over the resources, or do we continue the conversation and then go over the resources? Thoughts, feelings?
And yeah, I think if we could just go over the resources real quick in a minute and then
Great.
Jump into the conversation. Yeah.
Great. Hannah, do you?
Yeah, so we wanted to just help other city departments share out information. So we just wanted to share our help BPHC share out that COVID vaccines are free in the city, and in Mattapan you can get one at Morningstar Baptist Church at 1257 Blue Hill Avenue. Next slide. And there's an election coming up on Tuesday, November 2nd. The last day to register to vote is Tuesday, October 13th. And Stephanie is going to drop that link on how to register to vote in the chat. Next slide.
Right. And if you're voting by mail, just make sure that you can drop off the mail ballot in a drop box that's at the Mattapan Library, or you can also mail your ballot, or show up on election day and switch it for an in-person ballot.
You can also ride the Route 28 bus for free now until November 29th. So please go check out, there's more information about this pilot project at boston.gov/28bus. And Plan Mattapan is looking for property owners who are interested in having a mural on their wall for their public art project. Interested property owners can email Kenya Beeman, and Stephanie can drop Kenya's contact info in the chat. And we also want to share about Boston's public bike share program, Ride Blue Bikes. There's a discounted pass for people who participate in public assistance programs such as SNAP, Mass Health, or live in public housing, as an example. And discounted passes are just $50 a year or $5 a month. And it's great if you don't have a bike, if you just use your bike, if you just ride a trip twice every week, that ends up being 50 cents per ride. So please check out how to apply for this discounted membership at boston.gov/discounted blue bikes. And lastly, we just wanted to share how to stay in touch. You can call us, email us literally any day. If you have more questions, you can reach out to Mary by email or find out more information about the Public Health Commission. And our next chat in this series of topical chats is going to be about green infrastructure. And so that's how do we build things like tree pits and rain gardens into a street design. And so to sign up for that chat and to share with your friends and family, go to boston.gov/Cummins-Highway.
Thank you, Hannah.
Yeah. And then there's just one other thing.
Oh, yes.
So you can talk to us in person. We are going to be at the Mattapan Farmers Market every Saturday in October. The Mattapan Farmers Market is from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at 888 Cummins Highway. And so please tell your neighbors. This is one of the ways you can meet with us in person and share your feedback. You can talk with us as long as you want.
Yeah.
All right, I'll pass it back to you, Daniela.
Thank you. And as I mentioned previously, Esther will be there with us for Haitian Creole interpretation, and I will be there as well in order to have conversations in Spanish if somebody would like to talk to us. Okay, so we have a few minutes so we can continue the conversation. I will unmute Barbara. Barbara, you can talk now. Yes.
Okay, yes. Thank you. But I would like to ask, what happened to the original plans? I have my Cummins Highway Project 3-ring binder here. And I know when I went to a meeting at the Manhattan School back in 2018, 2019, we had a lot of proposal presented to us. I'm looking at concept number 1, concept number 2, concept number 3, concept number 4, and then I'm looking at Cummins Highway, Greenfield Road traffic signal, Cummins Highway, Greenfield Road roundabout. What happened to all of these plans? Because what happened was when you guys came out and with the design that's up there now, none of the design that's on Cummins Highway now was not presented to us at any of the meetings at the Manahunt School. So my question to you guys is, what happened with all of those presentations that you did before what you have up there now? And I think the same thing is going to happen again. You're showing us all of these designs, but then when the final project is up, it's going to be something totally different from what we agreed upon. And the other thing I want to say too, I think Zach said it, what other ideas do we have that could help slow down the traffic on Cummins Highway? I think the only way we can do that is to take away that left turn when people are coming from Milton and Brockton and all that, when they make that left turn onto Cummins Highway. They should be able to, they should go down to Morton Street and make a left turn to get into the city, not on Cummins Highway. But I just want you guys to think about, and I think maybe you need to show it to the audience the next time we have a meeting of the previous concept that was presented to us, especially number 4, because I thought that's the one that you was going to go with, taking the median out in the center, and then you had the bike lane on both sides. So I don't know if anyone still has those in your possession.
Yes, we have those in our possession and we presented those. And yeah, that was the meeting that I alluded to back in, I think it was February of 2020, where we presented different options. I believe the ones that you have showed, there was essentially a 2-lane option, which didn't do much in the way of transforming the street other than probably adding streetlights, but maintaining the 2 lanes. So we talked about how that really didn't mitigate much of the safety issues that were brought up as far as, high speeds and, crossing the street and all of those type of factors. And I think we showed other options that, had the median in there, didn't have the median in there. The picture that you're seeing on the screen is essentially the preferred concept that we were talking about at that time, which is the 2 lanes and removing the median and adding the protected bicycle facility on the side. As I said, we tried to duplicate this as best we could with the trial. However, it's not 100% perfect. And one of the major things that we weren't able to duplicate was the removal of the median, which I know is one of the major reasons for the issues that a lot of people have brought up about the traffic congestion and the emergency vehicles and all of that type of thing. But we wanted to implement it because we wanted to test out the safety component of it, to test out how people behaved as far as driver speeds and everything. And we found that it's had slower speeds. We have noticed the issues that folks have brought up, and we're all taking all of those issues and everything into account. So it's really just a trial to test out, the concept of reducing the lane, but knowing that that all the stuff that we talked about at those meetings still rings true. And so what you're seeing here on the screen is more along the lines of what we're looking at, and more consistent with exactly what we were talking about with what I think you're looking at in your binder right now. And as far as, sorry, just to respond to your, I believe you're talking about the Mattapan Square intersection and the left turn coming in from Milton. So we do have another project, not this project, but we're obviously working very closely with that project that the Transportation Department is leading, to look specifically into the functionality and of the Mattapan Square intersection itself. So that will be done in close coordination with this project to increase the safety and efficiency at that intersection as well.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing I just want to say, when we started these meetings, it was about Cummins Highway. Let's keep it about Cummins Highway. All of the other information that you're giving us about, food and all this stuff, we're getting that information through our neighborhood association. So, and highlighting and summarizing, about previous meeting, I personally, I don't see that as being necessary. You're taking away time from other people who would like to comment about Cummins Highway. I would like to keep this meeting, and I don't know whose idea it was to start implementing other information, about the farmers market and all these other things that's happening in the community. We are getting that information from our neighborhood association. We have 2-3 neighborhood association. So if I would just like to keep this meeting about Cummins Highway. Okay, thank you.
Sure, we hear you in that. And, one of our goals is to continue to share information. A lot of folks at this meeting said that they might not have heard about some of our previous meetings and everything. So we like to, interagency, as we're always talking to each other, make sure that that information is out there for folks. But yes, I understand. And we definitely want, obviously, to make sure that we're hearing specifically about Cummins Highway. So understood.
Thank you. Thank you.
One last point. See, this is why the resources are important. I forgot to add that there's going to be a meeting, so please put a pin on it. We don't have a meeting invite yet, but for the 18th of October, there will be a meeting on Mattapan Square about that intersection, and sort of we'll walk through some of those elements and things and goals to determine for that project. So just put a reminder to yourself, and we'll share out that information as soon as we have a meeting invite registration link to share with you.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, and we just want to make sure everybody's connected to all of it. So if you hear one thing at one meeting, then you can be connected to anything and everything that you want to participate in, so you're engaged in your community. And we really appreciate the engagement here tonight as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
And then Sheila. Oh, sorry. Sheila, can you?
Yeah. Okay, you can hear me. So the connection that was being made about the health relative to high incidences of high blood pressure and diabetes in this community, I am not sure if the implication is that these health issues will be decreased based upon this street design of Cummins Highway. Because for my part, my blood pressure and COPD has increased based upon this street design on Cummins Highway, as well as American Legion. It's like there is this design of these little white things that are forcing people into one lane, and there's nobody in the bike lane, so that you have to avoid it. It's like an obstacle course that raises high blood pressure and forces people to go and eat junk food and raise their diabetes to lower the stress of riding on Cummins Highway in other areas. So that's the first comment that I would like to make, that I don't see why there was this connection saying, implying that my diabetes, or if I have it, and my blood pressure, if I have it, is going to be decreased because of this safe street design. When there's traffic, the quality of air is horrendous. I have to close my windows and stay inside the house because of the fumes from the car. That's the other thing, that I would hope that you stay off of the side streets. Just stick to Cummins Highway, what you're doing on Cummins Highway, but stay off the side streets. I've noticed that some of these side streets in Roslindale, Jamaica Plain, you put these little white things up and you can't go down these streets. They've made them, you block them off, they become dead ends. Please stay off of the side streets because you're going to make it worse. Just focus on Cummins Highway.
Thank you, Sheila. I just wanted to jump in and say, that about to your point around the health and stress and heart disease and diabetes, I absolutely did not want to make the point that the street design is causing that, or that changing the street design can take it away, because it's because that is not at all true, and I apologize if that's the implication that I made. That's my own communicating. What we're thinking about in public health is all about big picture population. It's not about in one person's individual health or individual experience. So when we're thinking about it, it's like how a group of people, a population, are how they interact with their environment and how that impacts their health. So it's not about this particular street. And I will say that, I didn't intend for my presentation to be specifically about Cummins Highway, but about like how our interacting with our built environment and the ability to be safe can impact our health as a community. And then it's kind of across the board, not just specifically. So it's not a causal effect at all. I think what we know is that, the built environment, which your street is part of, is one of the social determinants of health, and it's one of the things that impact your health. And so when we think about like development of chronic diseases, these are they're it's one of the things that influence it, but it is not a cause. It is not something that can be reversed. And I think it's not about any one particular person's or even group's decisions about decisions about health behaviors. It's how the whole environment impacts us over a lifetime that impacts whether or not, we develop certain diseases for what period of time. And I'm happy, if I know we're out of time, I'm happy to talk more specifically, or feel free to email me if there's any particular questions about that.
I'll just add to that, and thank you, Mary. I think, the correlation that we're trying to bring is we want to make this a comfortable and safe street for all users, which I think in general, adds to, enhances your a healthy lifestyle. So, more opportunities for people to walk, more opportunities for people to bike, but also, the built environment, as you said, Mary, just providing that space that people can enjoy more freely without having to be stressed about this and that. So I understand where people are coming from with the stresses of traffic, and we've heard a lot about that and everything here tonight, but we're also we're looking at that safety component and keeping people safe, and promoting that complete street where people feel safe and have that opportunity to enjoy the public space in a different way than they had before. And maybe you want to take a walk on Cummins Highway because it's a more beautiful environment, and engage with your neighbors and everything like that. So that's sort of the goals that we're trying to go with this project, and any street project that we're taking a look at.
Okay. On that note, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight and for sharing with us and for talking with us. I just want to be mindful as well that it's 8:11 and people have other things to attend to, dinner, children. So with that, I will bring us to an end of this meeting, and thank you all for coming. And we hope to see you again at the Green Infrastructure meeting. We will be talking with Dave Quilley from Cotman Square. So this is, again, another person that will sort of bring a point of view and an idea. And then we will talk about how green infrastructure connects the Cummins Highway and sort of those opportunities there. So yeah, again, thank you for coming. If you have any questions, if you have any feedback, you can come see us on Saturday You can email us. Stephanie, if you have a chance to drop our emails in the link, or just even if you respond to just that Zoom link that you got today, it will get to me, and we can sort of work through any other thoughts that you've had that you haven't been able to have today. So I'll give a second for Stephanie to drop off all of our emails before I conclude the meeting. Thank you again for coming. Yeah. Have a good night. Oh, and you can download the chat. I forgot to say the 3 little dots, save file, chat. That way you can keep all of this information and all the links that were shared. And if we didn't get to your comment on the chat, we'll get to it after. Thank you. Good night.